Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new here, this is Automotive Anonymous, and I'm currently driving a Pontiac GTO, but more specifically, it's the 04, which is the only year of the LS1. This one does have some goodies though, some headers, an intake, and a tune, and it rips. Even at partial throttle, just riding out of gear, sounds fantastic, but it is a big 3,800 pound coupe. So let's see how it slows down. Coming maybe with a half throttle pedal starting now. Throttle pedal, that was the brake pedal. We don't want to be putting the throttle pedal on if we're, coming up to a red light. But again, it sounds glorious. The LS1 is a pushrod engine, and from the factory, this thing made about 350 peak horse at 6,000 RPM and about 365 foot-pound-feet of the twisty torque. Both the headers, the intake, the tune, it's probably in perfect ideal conditions, about 50 horsepower more at the crank. So after you lose all the power through the transmission, the wheels, the drive shaft, it probably dynos in the 320s or 330s. But you guys are the expert. If you own one of these, correct me. What does yours dyno at? Bone stock and with whatever modifications you have. I'd love to know. But otherwise, just driving this civilly, it idles, around 1,600 going 50 right now. Unfortunately, the 4L60 transmission is only a 4-speed. If it was the T56 manual, which is a really good, really powerful, or power handling manual transmission, that would have been a lot more fun. But I've actually owned a 4L60 because I used to have a Pontiac Trans Am, and I did basically the same thing as this. Full bolt-ons and a tune, and it was glorious. These things run really well. They feel very sound, and I just am having a good time. It does weigh 3,800 pounds without me in the car, so with me, that's close to 4,000 pounds. Changes directions though fairly well for that. There's a little bit of a dead feel at the beginning, almost like a truck, which this steering wheel almost looks like it's a rebadged version of a Chevy Silverado wheel with the 6 o'clock position, which I do like that position. But after you get through the dead feel, it feels like you do start to load the weight onto the different springs and suspension, and this thing comes to life a little bit. But it is a muscle car, and muscle cars from 20 years ago didn't handle. Not like today anyways, where muscle cars are basically sports cars. But driving impressions, seeing these big trucks on the road, I don't feel that little in this. I have good visibility down the side mirror, the rear view mirror, the other side mirror, and the A and B pillar really aren't that wide. The C pillar is a bit wider, and you're not going to be having a good time if you're a full-size adult trying to fit in the back seat of here. But at least having the back seat means your insurance premium is going to be lower, and it means you can store more stuff beyond just the 9 cubic feet or so that the trunk has. Yeah, it takes a corner pretty good. And just partial throttle again to get up to speed. I can promise you guys that through the camera, it will never sound half as good probably as how glorious this LS sounds in person. As far as I can tell, is unnamed for the cat back, and the headers usually aren't branded either, but it's probably just your basic parts. If you want to do these mods to your GTO, usually pace setters, I don't know if they're still around, or some of those other cheaper 304 steel parts, you can do a lot of these bolt-ons to LSs for fairly cheap. I'm sure all the the intake and exhaust work on this one before installation, if you don't do that yourself, probably less than $1,000. Not sure about this hood, but I'm digging it. I'm digging the bulge, and I'm digging the reverse style heat extraction. I think it looks really good, and this blue color is just fantastic. But there's few things funner than driving through the country, looking at some hay bales, looking at some cows a little bit earlier, and driving a Pontiac GTO, which these were sort of named after the Ferrari 250 GTO from way back when. And I'm really sad to see, though, that the GTO is gone, that we only got it for 3 years in the most recent era. This is also shared with the Holden Monaro. So this Pontiac actually should have a lion right there, because this is a Holden, which ended in Australia just a few years ago. But this is one of the very few cars that has ever come to America at least while it's, you know, brand new, meeting EPA regulations, that was actually built in Australia, being the Holden Monaro. And if you really want to know something cool, Holden also had the Ute, which was basically this front end with an El Camino in the back. And if you have a lot of money to spend to buy one of these and to pay 40, 50 grand for it to be chopped up and rearranged, reassembled, you can go to a company in Colorado called Left Hand Utes, and you can have a street legal Holden Monaro, but they're not cheap. And honestly, the way this one's configured, it's really nice. You know, you have some cup holders, you have a little bit of storage space in the center console. My backpack's having a good time, and I think you guys have waited long enough, so I'm gonna get to the 0 to 60 and show you how fast this thing is. But keep in mind, where I'm currently at with density altitude, the air quality is worse than that of 1 mile above sea level. So this powerful little 5.7 liter LS, it's actually struggling to breathe. It's like it has an oxygen resistant mask on right now, and it's not having a very good time. You lose about 3 to 3.5% of horsepower per 1,000 feet of elevation. So this is down on power roughly 20%. So if it maybe makes 400 horse on a cold day at sea level, we're maybe only making about 320 right now at the engine, which is probably like 260 at the tire. So it's not gonna be the world record, at least I don't think it is. And I'm gonna share the same 0 to 60 because I actually did 2 of these runs earlier when I was filming my main review of this. So if you haven't seen my main review posted a little bit before this video, there is a more legit, not impromptu driving impressions video. This, again, like a lot of those videos where I have a point of view driving impressions, it's just because it's actually a genuinely good car and I don't want to give it back. But I did a couple 0 to 60 runs on that because I wasn't happy with the first one, and then the second one was only about 1/10 of a second faster. So with that said, let me show you what that 1/10 of a second faster pass was. And like this video if you like cows and hay bales. And true 0 to 60 came in at 6.54, which is pretty average. I actually did a run before this and it was about the same, which with this being down on power 20% and not on a private sticky track, honestly, what do you expect? Anyways, guys, mid 6s, you know, for a hot day at a mile above sea level, you really can't complain too much. I was basically expecting that because that's kind of where my Trans Am started, which the LS1 and that, you know, basically the same power level, but it weighs a little bit less than this. After I did headers, my full bolt-ons, I could get it into the mid 5s without discrediting rollout, but that was also on a little bit cooler day, a little bit lower density altitude. So what you can expect in a bone stock one of these LS1 04 models might be as bad as about 7 seconds true time if you live where I live or where I'm testing today in this town, in this country. But the LS2, probably about a second faster with its extra 50 horsepower. But by today's standards, these muscle cars, they're not going to keep up with the modern 5-liter 6.2 LS cars and the 6.4 Hemis and beyond. But does it really matter? With how much fun you're having, knowing that you're driving an iconic car, one of the very first muscle cars that came out back in 1964, that has a legacy of literally basically having its engine hammered in to fit the body when these first came out as a trim level back in 1964. You know, I can't complain. This is one of the funnest muscle cars that I have ever driven, and despite it not being sub 4 seconds 0 to 60, like some of you guys, if you only care about the modern stuff, you know, might want to see, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, chances are you're not the fastest car on the road anyways, so you might as well drive what you enjoy, what you're gonna have a lot of fun with. And honestly, I think this GTO is that. So let's finish it with one last nice full pedal acceleration. If you like this video, like the video, comment your thoughts and opinions below, subscribe if you haven't already. I hope to see you on the next one. And I'll link this below. It's at Goody Motor Ford. See you guys.